All right, let's face it. Breaking up with a partner, it can be tough, but sometimes it can be just as tough, if not more tough, to actually cut off a friend.
Oh, definitely. Whether you have been friends for just a year or besties for decades, severing a close bond can hurt, even if that friendship was toxic.
Yeah.
Plus, falling out with a close friend, it can have a major impact on our overall mental and emotional health. But here to help is Elizabeth Pearson. She's a life coach and author of Career Confinement. Elizabeth, it's great to have you out from California. So why is it that breaking up with a friend tends to hurt as much, if not more, than a romantic partner?
Well, I think for women, we tend to kind of like go in fast and deep. So we immediately trust other women, and we don't really see a potential ending. Whereas with a romantic relationship, I think we're kind of like crossing our fingers, like, well, we'll see how this plays out. But with women, I think that we really see a long-term future, right? So we trust immediately, we might overshare a little bit, and we get really emotionally connected, like right out of the gate.
Oh. I love what you said about sort of envisioning an end, because that's part of the pain, right, is that it's shocking. You just don't anticipate it. So if this does happen to you, what do you do about it? How do you cope?
Well, I think first off, it's really great to identify, are we just growing apart? Is this like somebody moved away and maybe, you know, it just had its day in the sun, the friendship needs to wrap? Or did you have a legitimate falling out? And if you had a falling out or a disagreement, I think it is really good to go back and assess, is this friendship salvageable? Is it something that's healthy? Is this person somebody I want back in my life? And if it's the latter, I do think that it's great to really do some outreach. And at the end of the day, I think life is short. And you know, the last 3 years have showed us a lot. And if there's somebody that you love, I do feel like it's worth making an attempt to rekindle that friendship.
A little bit of grace.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. What if you have a falling out and it is not something you can rekindle, but that person is part of your close friend group? How do you, you know, keep that from affecting the other relationships you have?
Yeah, I think that you need to stay neutral as much as possible, and you need to really resist the urge to trash talk that person to the other group members, because you don't want to put them in an awkward position of having to choose. So I say create boundaries, right? Have some really like transparent reasons of like why you can't be around that person for more than, you know, like an afternoon lunch is very different than a girls trip for 5 days.
Sure.
So I think like talk about that, and then just make sure that you're really kind of taking the high road with the friend group, and you're resisting the urge to lean into like a judgmental headspace.
Like the opposite of what we see on Real Housewives.
I was just going to say, if they can patch things up, I mean, my gosh, I think anybody, I mean, they're getting paid a lot of money to do it, but I think sometimes we could take like a page out of that book, whereas you really can't overcome anything in a friendship if you care enough.
And it's interesting. I mean, you guys are talking about adults, but what about kids? I mean, for those of us who are raising little people, who want to make friends, who want to be accepted, what do you do if you see this happening to your child?
It's so hard, because I'm in this right now too. I've got an 11 and an 8-year-old, and sometimes, you know, people will shun your kid. And so one thing I do is I say, make sure that they have a friend group outside of school, because if the kids at school decide, you know, they don't want to mess with you right now, then they have a sports team or they have an art class or something where there's other friends or family members. But I do think that we need to model at home how to act when you do have a falling out. So really lean in and say, I understand that so-and-so's not, you know, playing with you, but maybe if you were in their position, how would you feel? So just teach them empathy and role model for them, and try not to get involved.
Empathy and grace. Life coach Elizabeth Pearson. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Great to have you, Elizabeth, and you are watching NBC News Daily.